She didn't bring a lightsaber. She didn't bring an arrest warrant. She didn't bring the Jedi. Padmé Amidala walked into Palpatine's executive residence carrying nothing but a stack of galaxy-scale evidence, the memory of a man she once trusted, and the future of her unborn children in her other hand. She arrived at the exact hour Mace Windu had been assigned to arrive. In the original timeline, Mace walked in. He lost 4 Jedi. He tried to kill the Chancellor. The Chancellor survived. The galaxy fell. In this timeline, Padmé is the one who walks in first, a former queen, a sitting senator, a wife carrying a teacher's instinct for grief, and a Sith Lord is sitting at his desk drinking Alderaanian wine when she arrives. He has no idea what is coming. Padmé in the elevator mirror. Slow zoom into the executive residence windows glowing on Coruscant's skyline. This story begins 2 years before the night Padmé breaks the Republic open. By this point in the Clone Wars, the Jedi Council was already suspicious of Chancellor Palpatine. They were watching him the way they had once watched Count Dooku from a distance. They had felt patterns. They had sensed shadows move behind the right hand, but the Order was exhausted. The war was killing them. Every sector needed a master. Every temple was short on knights. The Republic's wartime demands had drained the Jedi of the kind of patient attention they had once used to read politics. The council hesitated, and in that hesitation, Padmé Amidala began her own quiet work. She had been a queen before she was a senator. She had been a teenager negotiating peace treaties while older men tried to make her a symbol. She had spent years reading Senate floor language the way Obi-Wan read midichlorian counts. So when Palpatine began tightening his grip over the Republic's wartime powers, Padmé did not just feel uneasy. She noticed. She noticed when the banking clan voted against its own interests. She noticed when the Trade Federation's lobbyists quietly changed positions. She noticed when 3 mid-rim senators who had been vocal critics of the Chancellor 1 month ago suddenly stopped appearing in committee sessions. She noticed when her own intelligence staff, embedded deep inside the Republic's internal security office, began flagging unusual treasury transfers routed through backwater systems she could not identify. She noticed, and she started writing. Not a political memo this time, a list. Every name, every number, every vote that contradicted public record, a spreadsheet the kind of person she trusted most would have read. Padmé in a private study, blue hollow glow, list of names scrolling past. By the second week, the list told a story she had been quietly terrified of for a year. A single office was pulling the strings of nearly every emergency measure that had crippled the Republic. The Chancellor's office, the Chancellor himself. But that wasn't enough. What made Padmé different from every other senator who had suspicions, Bail Organa, Mon Mothma, even Mas Amedda, wasn't the data. It was who she could reach. She could reach the man Palpatine had been quietly cultivating for 13 years. She could reach Anakin Skywalker. And for the first time in this timeline, she did it right. Padmé had not come to this conclusion lightly. She had spent months building her dossier. She had raised questions with friends in the Jedi Order. Master Yoda, slow-moving, patient, never easy to reach. Yoda had told her the Jedi were uneasy, that the Force had warned them, but in the Jedi way, Yoda had told her very little of substance. What Yoda didn't know was that the Chancellor's intelligence staff had been tapping Padmé's private channels for over 6 months. They had been intercepting her holocomms. They had been reading her private communications with Bail. In the original timeline, this network had been Palpatine's prep. In this timeline, it almost saved Padmé's life. One of her own junior staff, a young Alderaanian engineer named Tycho, who'd been quietly reassigned to her office by Bail Organa, noticed the anomaly. A single ping on a comm relay that did not match Republic standard protocols. Tycho traced it. The trace ended in a private transmission hub located inside the Chancellor's executive residence. That was the moment Padmé understood. She was being watched, not by Republic intelligence, by Palpatine himself. If she reported this to the Senate, she would be silenced. If she reported it to the Jedi Council, she would be dismissed as a politician playing politics during wartime. If she leaked it through the press, it would be twisted within an hour. There was only one path left. She had to act before Sidious could move. She set her plan in motion that same evening. Not the Senate, not the Jedi. She would go to the Chancellor herself. Padmé's hand on a comm unit. The green light flickers to red. Mace Windu had been assigned to confront the Chancellor at midnight. He had 4 other masters with him: Kit Fisto, Saesee Tiin, Ajan Kolar, Stas Ali. Every detail of his plan had been carefully arranged. They were supposed to enter the residence through the private service corridor. They were going to arrest Palpatine under emergency Jedi authority. They were going to bring him before the Senate within 12 hours. They were going to expose him as a Sith Lord in front of the entire galaxy. Padme learned of the plan from Bail Organa 3 hours before the operation began. Bail had been tracking Mace's movements through Senate intelligence briefings. He had grown alarmed at the timing. Mace's arrest was supposed to happen during the same night that Palpatine had scheduled a Senate emergency vote. If Mace moved too early, Palpatine would have time to fire Order 66. If Mace moved too late, Palpatine would have unlocked emergency powers that would have been almost impossible to revoke. Bail called Padme 1 hour before Mace's team was supposed to move. He said 4 words, "You need to go first." Padme didn't understand. Bail explained. Mace moving without a civilian witness will look like a coup. The Senate will panic. Sidious has spent years building a narrative that the Jedi are militarist, political, and dangerous. If the Jedi arrest the Chancellor in a midnight operation, half the Republic's homeworlds will turn on them. "And if I go first?" Padme asked. "Then a sitting senator arrives at midnight alone with a stack of evidence, and a Sith Lord has to answer to a Republic civilian before the Jedi ever cross the threshold." Ba Nu stared at the holocall image of Bail. "You want me to be the witness? I want you to be the reason this looks like law, not war." Ba Nu made. Padme had spent her entire adult life being a symbol of something greater than herself. She had been the Queen's decoy. She had been the wartime senator who refused to let the Republic lose its dignity. She had been the secret wife who held her marriage up to her chest every time the Chancellor brought it up over dinner. Now she was going to walk into the most dangerous room in the galaxy, wearing her old Queen's robes, carrying her evidence binder. And she was going to fight a Sith Lord with words. Padme entering the executive residence elevator, hands folded, controlled breath. The executive residence elevator rose through Coruscant's upper levels with a soft hum. Padme felt every floor of it pass beneath her. She was not the woman who had walked down the Senate steps 19 years ago to begin her career. She was not the teenage queen who had watched her planet burn while she negotiated trade routes. She was not even the wartime senator who had given speeches that moved armies. She was a wife. A mother, a woman who had walked into this building many times as a guest of a man she had once trusted. And tonight she was going to walk in as his accuser. She had rehearsed the opening line 26 times on her private holo recorder. "Chancellor, I have evidence that requires your immediate attention." That was the line. Not "I accuse you of treason," not "You are Darth Sidious," not "I know what you have done." Those lines were for the Jedi. Padme was going to be the calm, the Republic's mirror. A senator telling a chancellor that he had failed his republic. That is harder than any lightsaber combat. It required Padme to not flinch when Palpatine threw lightning at her with words. It required her to not lose her voice when he smiled that smile. It required her to listen to every manipulation he had been practicing on her for years, and to recognize it as theater. The elevator opened. The private residence stretched before her, polished marble, soft Coruscant light streaming through tall windows. The Chancellor standing at his desk, holding a glass of Alderaanian wine, watching the city below. He turned. His face changed slightly when he saw who had come. "Padme?" he said warmly. "This is unexpected." She stepped out of the elevator. "My Lord Chancellor, I have evidence that requires your immediate attention." Palpatine did not move. His eyes flicked briefly, toying with something behind his smile. "By all means, the Republic is always grateful for your service." He gestured toward the chair across from his desk. Padme sat down. She opened the binder. Padme's hands opening the binder. Slow pan over Senate financial dossiers, Treasury transfer logs, and a single name written in gold. What happens next is the part no one remembers because no one watched it. Palpatine put his wine glass down and tilted his head forward. The way a prosecutor listens to a witness he is about to dismantle. But Padme was not a witness. Padme was a teacher. She had taught children. She had taught apprentices. She had taught monarchs. She had taught the Republic to keep believing in itself. She knew how to break a powerful man's attention by refusing to attack him. "Chancellor," she said, "I'm going to give you 3 numbers. I want you to tell me why they are wrong." She opened the first page. 40 billion credits. Routed out of the Republic's covert operations treasury under Chancellor-level discretion alone. No committee approved this figure. No Republic department requested it. You authorized every line. Where did the money go? Palpatine's smile did not falter. Military operations require flexible funding, Senator. The Senate approved emergency powers during wartime. You appear to have used those emergency powers to fund shell companies on Munilinst, not military deployments. That's an interesting theory. Do you have evidence? Padme did not raise her voice. She simply turned the page. Mid-rim Senate voting patterns over the last 18 months. 11 mid-rim senators who had voted against your emergency powers in the first quarter of the war have been re-elected with no visible campaign funding. Your personal slush fund appears to have been quietly underwriting their campaigns through catering contracts that trace back to subsidiary accounts of the same company you used to route the Munilance transfers. Palpatine leaned back in his chair. Padme, you have always been diligent about the Republic's finances, but you are misunderstanding what you're seeing. And finally, Padme said, the clone behavioral inhibitor specifications. We have a copy obtained from a Kaminoan engineering archive that you believed was locked down under your office's emergency authority. It explicitly identifies this technology as the Republic's defensive counter against potential Jedi takeover. The same language appears in a directive that was prepared but never executed in your personal office. She closed the binder. What we have here, Chancellor, is the financial infrastructure of a parallel government operating inside the Republic's wartime command. It uses your name on every authorization. It uses the Chancellor's seal on every audit. And yet it does not answer to any institution the Republic is supposed to trust. Palpatine did not flinch. If I were a Sith Lord, he said softly, I would have done the same thing. You're describing basic wartime financial flexibility. And if I were an honest Chancellor, Padme replied, I would have explained every line. Their eyes met. For 3 full seconds neither spoke. Then Palpatine said the worst thing he could have said. Padme, you are carrying the children of the most powerful Jedi in the galaxy. You are running on correlation and fear. You're not the first senator who has come to this office with the same suspicion. What makes you think this time is different? Padme felt the trap close behind her. She had been worried about this moment for years. She was not going to flinch. Because the last senator who came to you with this concern ended their career 6 months later. Because the last diplomat who questioned your emergency powers was reassigned to a backwater post. Because the last child of a friend of mine who committed to standing against you is currently raising her daughter alone on Alderaan without ever telling her daughter that the Chancellor killed her father. Palpatine went still. You're not a junior senator making noise, Padme. You're a queen, and you came here knowing what you were risking. Yes. Why? Because I'm not going to let you raise my children as hostages. Cut to Padme's face. No flash, just her eyes holding the Chancellor's gaze. The elevator hummed behind them a few minutes later. Mace Windu stepped out. He expected to see a Sith Lord holding a Padawan hostage or about to ignite lightning. He expected a fight. He expected a Lord of the Sith to be laughing at the Republic's final moment of weakness. What Mace saw was Senator Amidala sitting in the guest chair with a closed binder on her lap, and Chancellor Palpatine sitting across from her with his wine glass half empty. I hope we are not interrupting, Palpatine said. Mace Windu's arms did not move. He looked at Padme. I think you arrived 3 minutes before I did, Mace said. I did, Padme replied. I needed the Chancellor to know that he had to answer to a civilian before he answered to a Jedi. Mace looked at the 4 masters behind him, Kit Fisto, Saesee Tiin, Ajan Kolar, Stas Ali. They had walked in expecting a fight. They had walked in expecting the worst lightsaber combat any Jedi had survived in 3 years. Padme had stolen the show. The Sith Lord was sitting in a chair. His own admission was 3 minutes old. Mace was not sure whether to be angry or impressed. But Mace Windu was, above all, a tactical man. He took 3 steps forward. Chancellor, Mace said, you are under arrest for treason against the Galactic Republic. You do not need to consent. You will not be given the chance to refuse. Any move you make now will be treated as a hostile act against the sitting government of this republic, witnessed by Senator Amidala and the 4 Jedi Masters standing behind me. Palpatine's smile never wavered. You will regret this, Windu. That's possible, but we are willing. The Chancellor's right hand drifted slightly toward his desk. Padme spoke. Don't. Her voice did not carry anger. It carried the weight of a queen who had once walked into a Senate session and refused to accept that an entire planet's people would die for a galactic blockade's convenience. I know what you can do, Chancellor. I have known for 20 minutes. 4 Jedi Masters will not stop you if you are what I believe you are. But 5 witnesses in this room, 4 of them with sabers, and 1 of them a sitting senator with the full recording of this conversation, will make the entire galaxy understand what happened here tonight. Story wins. You taught me that. Palpatine's eyes tightened. The smallest movement. The first time in his entire career as Supreme Chancellor that someone had outmaneuvered him verbally. Padme had done it not with a lightsaber. She had done it with patience. A 2-year patient, quiet, careful investigation. A speech that had lasted 3 minutes longer than a lightsaber combat would have. A binding test of wills that had given the Republic 5 witnesses ready to testify. Padme extended her hand. Chancellor, please come with us. For the first time in his life, Palpatine hesitated. He looked at each of the Jedi in turn. He looked at Padme. He did the math. He stood up. He did not reach for his saber. He walked. Padme and Mace walking out of the executive residence, aboard the Senate cruiser. Bail Organa waiting at the dock. Anakin Skywalker was halfway through a routine campaign debrief on a distant rim world when the news reached him. He had been in the field for 2 weeks with a depleted battalion of clone troopers and a small Jedi strike team. They had barely slept. They had lost 2 knights. They had cleared 3 contested mining colonies. When Obi-Wan calmed him with the headline, Anakin thought for several long seconds that the Jedi had staged another arrest that had gone wrong. Then he heard the second part. Senator Amidala had done it, alone. And Anakin did something uncharacteristic. He laughed. Not the way the council laughed when something mildly amusing happened. Not the way Obi-Wan laughed at his own dry humor. He laughed the way a man laughs when the future of his family has just been saved by the woman he loves. Anakin closed his eyes. He thought of his children. He thought of how close he had been, in another version of this timeline, to breaking. How close he had been to walking down that hallway. How close he had been to ignoring Obi-Wan's compassion. How close he had been to looking at his wife and seeing only the thing that hurt the most. He thought of Mustafar. It had never happened in this timeline. Padme had done something that he could not have done. She had gone to the Sith Lord with nothing but evidence, and she had walked out with him restrained. When Anakin returned to Coruscant a week later, Padme was already 8 months pregnant. She was thinner than he had ever seen her. She was exhausted in a new way, but she was also lighter. The Republic had survived. The Empire had died. Their children were going to be born into something she had spent her entire life fighting for. Luke was delivered under heavy security in early summer. He was placed quietly with Owen and Beru Lars on Tatooine 3 weeks later. Beru held him the same way she held every moisture farmer's child who came into her home, with patience, with warmth, with the quiet understanding that you do not need to be a parent to be a parent. Leia was delivered to Bail Organa in late summer. Bail held her and cried for the first time in 30 years. He had been waiting for this child without knowing it. He had been waiting for the gift that would carry the Republic's hope forward through whatever came next. Padme never returned to politics. She had won. The Republic had been saved. But the Republic she had saved was not the Republic she wanted to live in. It was bruised, cautious, suspicious. It had been bled white by the Chancellor's quiet empire in the Senate. So Padme became something simpler, a mother, a wife. A woman who had once held the Republic together with a senator's grace and now just wanted to watch her daughter learn to speak and her son learn to ride. Every 6 weeks, Anakin sat on Tatooine with her, holding Luke in his arms, first as the chosen hero who had ended the war, then as a tired father who had earned rest through his wife's courage. Tatooine sunset, Owen's moisture farm, Anakin looking at Luke as a tiny child. The post-war years were not easy. The Republic had not collapsed into the Empire, but it had not returned to being healthy. It was a body that had survived a wound it had not known it had. Bail Organa became the Republic's most trusted political operator. He rebuilt the Senate's transparency measures from scratch. He reopened every committee that had been quietly suspended during emergency rule. He insisted that every senator's finances become public for the next decade. Mon Mothma became the chief strategist for the new wartime to peacetime transition. She had spent years resisting emergency powers. Now she wanted to delete them. Padme was consulted privately, often. But she never took public office again. She had done what she needed to do. The Jedi rebuilt slowly, not the way the Empire would later force them to. Quietly, honestly. The Clone Wars continued to wind down. Without Sidious at the center, the Confederacy's leadership collapsed. Dooku tried to rally the remnants, but without the shadow presence behind him, he lost control of half his senior commanders within months. Obi-Wan eventually tracked him down on a hidden orbital station near the Inner Rim. The duel was different this time. Obi-Wan did not fight for sport. He did not fight for revenge. He fought because Dooku was the last visible piece of the war machine, and the Republic needed closure. Dooku did not die in that fight. He surrendered. He went to the same warded holding cells where Sidious had been taken more than 2 years earlier. He never spoke about his former master to anyone who asked. He simply sat in his quarters and waited. Sidious was still in a prison cell on a remote world untouched by Republic traffic. His isolation ward was monitored by a rotating staff of Jedi and Republic security. He had no visitors. He had no leverage. He had no war to manipulate. He had only his memory of a galaxy that had almost become his. Sidious alone in his cell. Slow zoom through viewport. Nothing but stars. By the 4th anniversary of Padme's arrest of the Chancellor, the war was officially over. The Republic held a public remembrance. Anakin stood beside his wife at the balcony in their home that night. He did not say much. He did not need to. The war had been won. Their children were alive. The galaxy was not destroyed. The Sith had not risen. And some of the brightest things in the Republic's future were sleeping peacefully in rooms far from Coruscant, with no idea of what their parents had done. That was the gift Padme had given the galaxy that night, not victory. Quiet. A quiet that let children grow up without a war. A quiet that let Obi-Wan retire to Tatooine. A quiet that let Bail raise Leia. A quiet that let Yoda train a generation of Jedi who had never seen a battlefield. It is hard to measure the cost of that quiet. It is harder to measure its value. Slow fade on Coruscant's skyline at dawn. Theme music rises gently. Here is what you have to think about tonight. If Padmé Amidala had not walked into that executive residence at midnight, armed with evidence, dressed as a queen, holding her children's future in one hand, the Empire would have risen. Mace Windu would have walked in an hour later and lost 4 Jedi Masters. He would have fought Palpatine in a lightsaber duel that Palpatine would have won. Anakin would never have known about Sidious's true identity. The twins would have been born as hostages of a Sith Empire. All of it died the moment one woman decided she was the right person to face the monster alone. So I want to know what you think. Did Padme save the Republic, or did she just delay the Empire? Who made the harder choice that night? And did she pay a higher price than even she realized? Drop your answers in the comments. Tell me what you believe. That's our story for today. Like, subscribe, share with a friend who loves Star Wars. I'll see you next time.